The footage played on every Terran channel. Grainy, intercepted from a KRYTH war drone. Drovax. 7 burned in silence. No declarations. No warning signals. Just the sudden white arc of plasma bombardment scarring a once thriving colony of 3 million. Habitat domes cracked open like glass under a hammer. Shuttles disintegrated mid-ascent. Children, scientists, engineers, all reduced to embers in less than an hour. When the transmission ended, no one spoke in the Accord Assembly Hall. Delegates from 100 worlds watched the smoke curl in frozen frames, each knowing what the other feared to say. This was no border skirmish. It was an opening move. Commander Elias Varen stood at the center of the chamber, hands clasped behind his back, his black diplomatic coat absorbing the cold light. He was not a soldier, not officially anymore, but the faint lines at his eyes and the deliberate stillness of his posture betrayed years in uniform. They had called him back not for negotiation, but because he had the patience of a diplomat and the memory of a strategist. The Chancellor's voice broke the silence. "Commander, the Accord authorizes you to act as envoy. You will deliver our demand for restitution and stand down to the KRYTH Dominion." "And if they refuse?" someone asked from the Deltaran cluster delegation. Elias looked up at the suspended image of the burning colony. "Then they will have chosen their war." The chamber erupted, half in agreement, half in panic, but the decision was sealed. The orders were signed before the smoke had cooled over Drovax. 7. The HSS Oppenheimer cut across the dark like a blade of obsidian, its hull a moving shadow against the distant stars. Elias sat alone in his cabin, reading the dossiers on the KRYTH warlord, SK Wrath Vale, a creature bred for conquest, ruling a dominion that thrived on preemptive strikes. Their history was a litany of absorbed systems and silenced protests. What they had done to Drovax 7 was not madness, it was doctrine. A soft chime. His adjutant, Lieutenant Harrow, entered with a data tablet. "Approaching the KRYTH capital perimeter, sir. Their security vessels have locked sensors on us. No weapons primed yet." "Yet," Elias echoed. He closed the file. "Maintain course. Transmit our arrival codes." Harrow hesitated. "Permission to speak freely?" "Granted. They won't bargain. You've seen their history. They take, they consume, they move on." Elias studied the younger man. "And history tells them humans hesitate before we strike. They still believe that." The KRYTH capital system was a sprawl of industrial scars and fortress moons, each bristling with weapon arrays that tracked the Oppenheimer like a predator watching unfamiliar prey. Their flagship received him in a hall that reeked of metallic oils and insect musk. Walls were ribbed with chitinous structures. The air shimmered faintly, a chemical haze that made the back of his throat itch. High Warlord Skarath waited upon a dais of black alloy. He was taller than any human, a silhouette of segmented plates and bladed limbs, his 4 black eyes reflecting the chamber's dim light. Around him, KRYTH commanders clacked their mandibles in what passed for amusement as Elias was led forward. "You bring demands," Skarath hissed, his voice a vibration through the metal floor. "You bring words, after we have taken what we require." "I bring a chance," Elias replied evenly, his translator weaving his calm tone into their rasping dialect. Drovax 7 was a peaceful colony. Its destruction violates every interstellar accord. You will compensate the loss, withdraw your fleets, and open negotiation channels. Laughter, harsh and insectal, filled the chamber. One of the commanders scraped its talons across the floor. "You come alone, soft blood, and think your words weigh more than the ash of your dead?" Elias did not flinch. "I came alone because my people still believe in restraint." SK Wrath leaned forward, his carapace creaking. "Restraint is weakness. The galaxy remembers what we do to the weak." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Elias held his gaze. The faintest reflection of the burning colony still ghosted in his mind. The galaxy also remembers what happens when humans are pushed too far. Skarath dismissed him with a wave of his claw. "Take your message back. Tell your Accord the KRYTH Dominion does not yield. We will take what is ours." The escort let him out, the mocking clicks of their mandibles echoing behind him like the laughter of vultures. Back aboard the Oppenheimer, Elias sent his report. He did not embellish. He did not rage. He transmitted the footage of their contempt, the recordings of their words, and a single closing line. They have chosen their path. Within hours, encrypted orders rippled through the Terran fleet. Patrols tightened around border colonies. Orbital yards shifted from maintenance schedules to war production. Civilian traders whispered in dockside bars. The Accord sent a diplomat, and he came back silent. Elias remained by the observation deck as the KRYTH homeworld shrank into a pinprick behind them. Harrow approached quietly. You offered them their chance. They laughed at it, Elias said. Do you think they understand what comes next? No, Elias's eyes did not leave the stars. That is why it will work. On the third day of their return journey, news of new raids arrived. 2 colonies on the fringe stripped of resources, hundreds missing. The KRYTH broadcast their triumphs across neutral channels, boasting that the humans were too slow to answer. Markets trembled. Refugees fled core ward. The smell of fear began to creep through the galaxy. In his private log, Elias wrote only 3 words. Patience is over. As the chapter closed, the Oppenheimer slid into high warp, its silhouette fading toward Earth. Behind it, the first embers of retribution began to glow. The Terran Accord met behind sealed doors. The chamber that once echoed with trade disputes now felt like a war council disguised as a parliament. Reports from the frontier spread across the holotable. Colony raids, shipping lanes cut, abducted settlers taken to unknown coordinates. The KRYTH were no longer testing boundaries. They were carving them. Commander Elias Varen stood by the central display, arms crossed, as representatives argued. A senator from Mars slammed a hand on the table. We offered them dialogue. We sent a man they could respect. And they spat on it. Others countered with caution. A war with the KRYTH would drag half the frontier into chaos. Their numbers dwarf ours. We cannot match them ship for ship. Elias spoke, voice low but carrying. They think we won't fight because we rarely start one. They see patience as surrender. That belief keeps them reckless. The Chancellor's gaze settled on him. Then what do you propose? Time, Elias said. Not for them to build for us. Quietly. While they laugh, we prepare. That night aboard the HSS Oppenheimer, the corridors were quiet, but the ship pulsed with new orders. Fleet yards in the Vega sector were instructed to reroute their production schedules. Sleeper fleets, reserve squadrons mothballed since the Orion conflicts, were being awakened. Lieutenant Harrow joined Elias in the observation lounge. Beyond the viewport, the stars streaked in steady warp lines. They've hit 2 more colonies, Harrow said, reading from his tablet. One in the Talva's rim, another near the Cordic drift. Same pattern, strip the infrastructure, take the population, leave the shell. Elias sipped his tea, eyes distant. They're not just raiding. They're mapping us. Harrow frowned. Mapping. They strike where response time is longest, where communications lag. They're testing our reach. Every delay, every missed interception, becomes a line on their chart. Here the humans are slow. Here they are soft. The next day, Elias met with the Accord's intelligence director via secure hololink. The man's image flickered pale and severe. You think this is doctrine? The director asked. It's a campaign, Elias replied. Not conquest by brute force, predation by calculation. Your mandate is diplomacy, the director reminded him. My mandate, Elias said, leaning in, is to make sure Drovak's 7 does not repeat. There was a pause. Then, very well. Project Retribution is yours to initiate. Elias ended the call without a word. The seed was planted. Now came the deception. He began feeding the KRYTH carefully chosen intelligence leaks, false reports of fleet shortages, fabricated delays in reinforcement schedules, whispers of internal political division. The KRYTH, hungry for confirmation of their superiority, took the bait eagerly. In a smoky den on Calva Station, a neutral port near the contested rim, a KRYTH agent met with a Terran informant. The human was pale, anxious, his hands trembling as he passed the data chip. This proves it, the agent hissed, chitin clicking. The humans are stretched thin. One more push, and they crumble. The agent never knew the data was seeded by Elias himself. Weeks passed. Raids grew bolder. Convoys disappeared without distress calls. On the fringe worlds, settlers began whispering old Earth proverbs. Beware the lion when it sleeps. Elias moved like a shadow between military councils and diplomatic halls, wearing the same calm mask that had infuriated the KRYTH. Behind it, calculations stacked like gunpowder. In one quiet meeting, a councilwoman from the Taga sector confronted him. You say we prepare, but the people see only silence. They think we are doing nothing. That's the point, Elias said. The KRYTH watch for reaction. We give them stillness, and they lean closer. When they do, they will be within reach. The Oppenheimer docked at Eridan Prime, a fortress station hidden in the inner rim. Here, Elias inspected the prototypes, railguns with higher yield-to-mass ratios, stealth frigates designed for hit-and-fade strikes, orbital mine networks that could collapse entire trade routes. An admiral met him in the bay. All this, and yet no formal declaration, she said. Are you certain they won't see it coming? They can't see what they don't believe, Elias answered. They still think we're petitioners, not predators. Meanwhile, on the far side of the galaxy, the KRYTH Dominion celebrated another victory. High Warlord SK Wrath addressed his war council. The humans send envoys while we take their blood. They are slow to anger. They will kneel. A commander clicked its mandibles. And if they do not? SK Wrath's eyes gleamed. Then we carve out their defiance and scatter it to the stars. They cheered, their wings rattling against the black alloy walls. Not one of them noticed that their supply lines were already being marked, their patrol routes shadowed, their refueling stations mapped by cloaked Terran probes. On the 4th month of the KRYTH offensive, Elias received a transmission marked with the highest security clearance. It was short, just one sentence, authorization granted. Phase 2 may begin. He closed the message and looked to Harrow. Send the first deployments. Quietly. Where? Harrow asked. Where they believe us weakest. That night, Elias recorded a private note. Not for the Council, not for the fleet, but for himself. They think war is a blade you swing first and hardest. They've never met a species that lets the blade come close, then takes the arm that holds it. He sealed the log. Outside, Eridan Prime rotated slowly against the dark, its hidden guns now armed, its shipyards alive with silent purpose. As the second chapter ended, the pattern was clear. The KRYTH believed they had provoked a frightened prey. They did not see the scaffolding of retribution forming just beyond their sensors. The galaxy still spoke of peace, but its pulse had quickened. The first strike came without fanfare, without warning broadcasts or victory hymns, just silence. A KRYTH fleet of 23 warships, stationed at the Voran corridor to intercept human trade, ceased transmitting. Neutral traders whispered about a solar storm. KRYTH channels reported technical malfunctions. Only those in the highest circles knew the truth. The ships had been erased. Not crippled. Not scattered. Gone. Elias Varen stood on the observation deck of the HSS Oppenheimer, eyes fixed on the holographic projection of the engagement replay. The entire KRYTH formation had been drawn into a false distress signal. As they tightened formation, a wall of autonomous kinetic rods, each accelerated to a fraction of light speed, tore through their hulls. No beams. No explosions. Just pure momentum ripping metal and flesh apart. Lieutenant Harrow entered, face pale. Confirmation just came in. No survivors. Elias nodded slowly. No witnesses either. Sir, Harrow asked cautiously, do we release the footage? Let the galaxy know. Not yet, Elias said. Let the KRYTH wonder which shadow killed their fleet. 2 days later, whispers spread through the neutral zones. KRYTH patrols failed to return. Fuel depots burned out of orbit. Entire convoys vanished between stars. The Dominion's propaganda channels screamed sabotage, calling for vengeance, but beneath the noise was something new, hesitation. In the Accord's war room, a holomap bloomed with new colors. Crimson arcs, the KRYTH front, shrank under the creeping blue of Terran control. Admirals discussed deployments with hushed precision. Phase 2 is working, one officer said. They can't reinforce their forward lines without losing core supply. Elias watched in silence until a councilman asked, "Commander, how far do we push?" He met the man's eyes. "Until they believe." Meanwhile, in the KRYTH capital system, High Warlord SK Wrath slammed a clawed limb against the dais. Sparks burst from the alloy floor. 3 fleets in silence. 30 worlds whispering weakness. His voice rattled through the chamber. "Where is the enemy? Where are their banners, their declarations?" A commander clacked its mandibles. "They hide. They strike like vermin, cowardly." "No," Eskarath growled, pacing. "Not vermin. Something else. Something patient." The human counteroffensive unfolded with surgical precision. KRYTH outposts found themselves severed from command, their supply chains cut. Orbital refineries exploded without a single human ship detected. When patrols attempted pursuit, they followed phantom signals into minefields disguised as debris. At Eridan Prime, Elias reviewed the latest reports. "How long before they realize we're bleeding them intentionally?" Harrow asked. "They'll realize," Elias said, "but not soon enough. Arrogance blinds faster than darkness." The first open battle came at the Telmar Expanse, a staging ground critical to KRYTH logistics. They arrived expecting undefended cargo haulers. Instead, an entire Terran strike group emerged from stealth fields, cutting their formation apart before a warning signal could leave the system. Rail slugs punched through battleships like paper. EMP torpedoes turned carriers into drifting hulks. In the command chair of the Oppenheimer, Elias gave calm, clipped orders. "Target propulsion first. Leave them dead in space." Harrow glanced at him. "Not kill shots." "Not yet," Elias replied. "We want them to see the knife before it sinks." The KRYTH fleet broke in less than an hour. Those who fled carried one image burned into their sensors. Terran ships, black and blade-like, moving with the precision of predators that had never truly slept. After the battle, the galaxy began to stir. Neutral factions started locking their doors, whispering the same phrase across encrypted bands. "The humans have awakened." That night, Elias sat alone in his quarters, staring at an old Earth painting projected on the wall. A lion poised in the grass, eyes fixed on something beyond the frame. His log entry was brief. They thought patience was fear. They thought silence meant surrender. They forgot what silence hides. 2 weeks later, a KRYTH broadcast attempted to restore pride. SK Wrath himself appeared, mandibles gleaming under crimson light. "Humans strike from the dark because they fear the light. We will burn their shadows and grind their bones beneath our claws." Elias watched the transmission with the Admiralty Council. When it ended, one general smirked. "Desperation smells the same in every language." "They're consolidating," Elias said, "pulling back to defend their core." "Which means?" the Chancellor asked. "It means," Elias said quietly, "they finally understand this is war." But even as the KRYTH dug trenches in the void, humanity was already moving to the next phase. Convoys of stealth frigates drifted into position near the Dominion's inner systems. Cyber warfare units seeded viruses through merchant networks, turning the KRYTH's own logistics against them. Messages appeared on their secure channels. Short, mocking, untraceable. "You were warned." The chapter closed with a single transmission routed to Elias's console, its encryption pattern unmistakably KRYTH. The message contained no threats, no boasts, only one question. "What do you want?" Elias stared at it for a long time before replying with 3 words. "Too late now." He pressed send, then leaned back, the weight of inevitability settling over him like a shadow. The war had reached its breaking point. The KRYTH Dominion, once a creeping tide, was now a thrashing beast cornered by its own momentum. Their fleets, stretched thin and bled dry by precise Terran strikes, fell back toward the core systems. Worlds once proud under their banner dimmed, trade hubs silenced, foundries gutted, refineries turned to slag. Commander Elias Varen stood before the tactical sphere aboard the HSS Oppenheimer. Red spheres marked KRYTH fortresses. Blue arcs showed Terran spearheads converging. Between them, the final corridor to the Dominion's heart. Intelligence confirms they've deployed biological weapons on Kesari Prime, Admiral Solara said, her voice low. Civilian population, 180,000. Gone within hours. No survivors. The council chamber went silent. Harrow clenched his jaw. They knew we'd intercept their fleets, so they turned to toxins. Elias's reply was measured, but steel edged his tone. They've abandoned negotiation for extermination. We respond accordingly. The Chancellor's authorization came in a single sentence. Operation Final Silence is approved. The fleet moved like a blade sliding free of its sheath. Hundreds of warships emerged from folded space at the edge of KRYTH territory, forming a wall of black alloy and ion wake. Civilian channels flooded with warnings. Evacuate contested zones. Cease neutral shipping. For the first time in centuries, the Terran Accord declared open war. Skirmishes flared along the rim. KRYTH admirals attempted counteroffensives, but each move met precision that mirrored inevitability. Terran fleets did not chase. They cut, isolated, and moved on. For every battle lost, the KRYTH left wreckage that slowed their retreat. In the war room, a junior officer displayed incoming transmissions. KRYTH propaganda screaming defiance, demanding humanity stand down or face obliteration. Elias dismissed the feed. Noise. They broadcast strength to hide fracture. Fracture? Harrow asked. They're losing cohesion, Elias said. Desperation commands louder than confidence. The final push began at the Veil Expanse, the gateway to the KRYTH homeworld. 200 human warships dropped from warp into a maelstrom of ion storms and minefields. The Dominion had gathered everything left. Dreadnoughts, hive carriers, swarms of interceptors. The battle lasted 9 hours. Railguns cracked open carriers before their swarms could launch. EMP torpedoes left dreadnoughts drifting, blind and inert. Terran destroyers weaved through the debris, cutting engines with precision bursts, dismantling their command structure piece by piece. From the Oppenheimer's bridge, Elias coordinated the assault. Sector 3, focus fire. Leave no escape vector. An ensign reported, KRYTH flagship transmitting demands to parley. Parley? Harrow scoffed. After Kesari? Elias didn't turn. Ignore it. Continue. Inside the KRYTH flagship, High Warlord SK Wrath raged. His claws gouged the command dais as reports flooded in. Fleets collapsing, stations silenced, supply chains vanishing one after another. Bring me the human commander, he roared. I will tear his throat with my own mandibles. A subordinate hissed. Their fleets move like a noose, Warlord. They do not seek dialogue. They will break. Eskerath insisted. They always break. But outside his hull, human warships advanced without pause. When the last of the Veil defenses fell, the corridor to the KRYTH homeworld lay open. Operation Final Silence entered its final stage. Terran Command did not plan occupation. There would be no banners planted, no governors appointed. The mission was eradication of the war machine. Yards, arsenals, breeding stations, all dismantled until only memory remained. As the fleet assembled for the decisive strike, Elias stood before the command staff. The room carried a chill that no environmental controls could warm. We gave them a chance, he said quietly. We offered words before weapons. They chose this. Admiral Solara nodded. What of their civilians? They are not the target, Elias said. We take the claws, not the body. Leave their cities crippled but living. Let the survivors remember the cost. Harrow asked. And the warlord? Elias's gaze hardened. Him most of all. The siege began at dawn by KRYTH reckoning. From orbit, Terran railguns cracked open the hives that fueled the Dominion's fleets. Orbital foundries collapsed into burning atmospheres. Swarms of automated drones cut through communications arrays, leaving the planet deaf to its own defenses. KRYTH warships launched in chaotic waves, desperate to push the attackers back. Each wave dissolved against human formations. Precision replaced spectacle. No indiscriminate bombardment, no show of fury, only methodical destruction. SK Wrath transmitted his final message, a howl of rage, promising vengeance in 100 cycles. The reply was a single rail slug that tore through his flagship's bridge, leaving nothing but drifting fragments. By the third day, resistance crumbled. KRYTH commanders abandoned their posts. Civilians flooded subterranean shelters, watching the sky turn white with the glow of dismantled fleets. Terran forces did not pursue them. The war had never been for conquest. It was a message carved in orbit and ash. In the quiet after the last volley, Harrow stood beside Elias at the viewport. "It's over," Harrow said. "No," Elias answered. "The shooting stops. The lesson begins." As the chapter closed, the Terran fleet prepared withdrawal protocols. Automated beacons remained, broadcasting a single phrase in every known tongue. Mercy was offered. Mercy was refused. Learn from this. The galaxy, for the first time in centuries, fell silent. The KRYTH homeworld no longer roared with war. Its skies, once webbed with weapon platforms, hung silent above smoking scars. Orbital rings drifted in fractured segments. Foundries lay cold, their forges flooded with the black frost of vacuum. The Dominion's great fleets, those that hadn't been destroyed, scattered into exile, warlords fleeing to distant fringes with what remained of their strength. The HSS Oppenheimer floated in low orbit, a black silhouette against the glow of a burning horizon. Commander Elias Varen stood on the forward deck, reading the final casualty reports. No cheering filled the bridge. No triumphant songs echoed through the fleet. Victory had come not as a blaze of glory, but as a surgical excision of a threat. Lieutenant Harrow stepped beside him. "Evacuation corridors have been marked. Civilians are moving to the neutral zones. No interference from our side." Elias nodded without looking up. "Good. The Accord didn't come to claim their homes." Harrow's voice lowered. "You've dismantled their war machine completely. Some would call this mercy. Others—" He trailed off. Elias glanced at him. "Others will call it a warning." Later, in the command chamber, the Fleet Council gathered for the last transmission. A beacon relay was prepared, its signal to ripple across trade networks, pirate relays, neutral channels, and every listening post from the core to the edge. Elias stepped forward, the recording light cold on his face. "This message is not for the KRYTH alone," he began. "It is for all who watched and waited." The Terran Accord came with words first. They were dismissed. 3 million civilians burned because arrogance thought mercy meant weakness. He paused, the weight of the words hanging heavy. "We did not answer with conquest. We did not enslave, nor did we take their soil as ours. We erased only the hand that struck. If you remember nothing else, remember this: the Accord does not seek war. But if war is forced upon us, we do not fight to bargain. We fight to end it." The transmission ended. The beacon was released. Its pulse carried the lesson farther than any fleet could travel. Across the galaxy, the message spread. On distant worlds, alien councils replayed the footage. Terran fleets slicing through a power that had ruled their region for a century. Merchants whispered in low-lit taverns. Soldiers and neutral militaries watched the KRYTH collapse and tightened their patrol lines. On the icy moon of Pharaohs 3, a Deltaran trade lord muttered to his aide, "The humans, they didn't roar. They simply closed their jaws." Weeks passed as the Terran fleet withdrew, leaving behind only silence and ruins marked with warning buoys. Refugees trickled from the shattered Dominion, scattered and leaderless. Some were granted asylum under strict conditions. Others vanished into the void, taking their hatred with them. In the Accord Assembly, debates flared. How far was too far? Was the destruction justified? Could this precedent breed fear instead of respect? The Chancellor answered each with the same line: "We gave them a chance." One evening, aboard the Oppenheimer now stationed at Luna Dock, Elias recorded his final log entry before returning to civilian duty. "They will remember Drovax 7. Not as a tragedy alone, but as the day the galaxy learned the limit of our patience. The lesson was harsh, but it will keep more worlds alive than any treaty ever signed." He sealed the file, turned off the console, and stepped into the quiet corridor. Harrow met him near the airlock. "You think this is truly the end? For the KRYTH? "Yes," Elias said. "For the message? No. It will echo." Harrow hesitated. Some say you orchestrated annihilation. I offered restraint, Elias replied. They rejected it. What followed wasn't vengeance. It was survival. In the neutral sectors, KRYTH remnants began carving out new lives. Farmers on barren moons, traders under assumed names, a people stripped of empire yet not hunted to extinction. They carried their own tales now, of a diplomat who came with an open hand, and the storm that followed when it was struck aside. Months later, an alien envoy from the Lorati Confederacy stood before the Terran Council. We have revised our trade boundaries, she said carefully, and we propose a defense pact. The Chancellor arched a brow. Because of what we did to the KRYTH? Because of what you almost did not do, the envoy replied. You waited. You warned. Then you acted. The final chapter of the Dominion was not written in conquest, but in caution. Space lanes that once teemed with KRYTH patrols now flowed freely. Merchants ventured where they had fled. A phrase entered common galactic speech, to wake the Terran lion, not as a threat, but as a reminder. Elias Varen walked the gardens of Luna on his last night in uniform. The earth below turned slowly, lights glittering on the continents where humanity's story began. Harrow's voice echoed in memory. You've dismantled their war machine completely. Perhaps that was true. But Elias knew the truth ran deeper. They had dismantled the illusion that humanity could be pushed without consequence. He looked up at the stars, the same stars where it had all started, where Drovak's 7 still drifted as an empty grave. Mercy offered, he murmured. Mercy refused. And then he turned away, leaving the galaxy to remember.